It was Christmas Eve, a night filled with laughter, warmth, and joy. The kind of night where families come together, sip hot cocoa, and enjoy the twinkling lights on the tree. It's supposed to be a time of togetherness, a time when the whole world feels a little softer. But that night, everything felt different. I remember walking down the hallway, the smell of gingerbread cookies still lingering in the air, when I heard it, a quiet, almost unnoticed sound. A soft, shivering gasp. I stopped in my tracks and turned toward the sound. There, in the dimly lit corner of the hallway, I saw her, my daughter. Her small figure huddled in the corner, wrapped in a thin blanket. The fireplace was crackling in the next room, and laughter echoed from the living room where the rest of the family sat, oblivious. The warmth of the fire, the happiness that seemed to fill the house, and there she was, shivering. I could see her little shoulders trembling, the blanket barely enough to shield her from the cold that seemed to cut deeper than just the air. I didn't understand it at first. How could this happen? How could she be alone and cold on Christmas, while everyone else was laughing, talking, and celebrating? It didn't make sense. My heart sank as I walked closer to her, unsure of what to say or do. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness, a sadness that didn't belong in a house full of Christmas cheer. "Why are you cold, sweetie?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't say a word, but the look on her face spoke volumes. And that's when I realized it wasn't just the cold she was shivering from. Growing up, Christmas was always my favorite time of the year. The days leading up to the holiday felt like magic. The house would fill with the aroma of cinnamon and pine, the sound of Christmas carols would play in the background, and the excitement of seeing family, exchanging gifts, and sharing meals was enough to make my heart flutter. It was a time when everything felt right in the world. I always imagined that when I had my own family, Christmas would be the same. It would be perfect. Every year I'd decorate the house, bake the cookies, and gather my loved ones around the tree, just as my parents had done for me. My daughter, Emily, was only 5 at the time. She was still young enough to believe in all the magic that Christmas had to offer. She believed in Santa Claus, in reindeer, and in the joy that Christmas brought, and I loved seeing that wonder in her eyes. Her laughter, especially when she opened her presents, made every moment worth it. Watching her run to the tree wide-eyed and excited was a sight I would never forget. My heart swelled with pride, knowing that I could give her a happy childhood. We had a small house, but it was cozy. The living room was the heart of it. We had a beautiful fireplace, a family heirloom passed down through generations, and on Christmas Eve we would sit around it, sharing stories and making memories. That particular Christmas was no different. Everyone had arrived at our house, the cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandparents. It was chaotic as family gatherings often are, but it was the kind of chaos I cherished. The laughter of my siblings, the chatter of the older family members, and the playful teasing between my parents were all sounds I held dear. The house was warm, both physically and emotionally. We had the fire going, and as usual, there was music playing in the background. Emily had already made herself comfortable by the tree, eagerly waiting for the moment when she could rip into the presents. But as the evening wore on, I noticed something. It was subtle at first, easy to overlook. Emily wasn't as animated as she usually was. She didn't seem to care much about the presents, and the laughter from the others didn't seem to excite her as it once did. Instead, she quietly sat by the fireplace, wrapped in her blanket, staring at the flames. At first, I thought she was just tired. After all, the excitement of Christmas can wear anyone out. But something in the way she looked so distant, so alone, didn't sit right with me. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" I asked as I sat beside her, my voice gentle. She nodded but didn't meet my gaze. "I'm fine, Mommy." But I knew something was off. A mother can always tell when something is wrong with her child, even when they don't say it out loud. I let it go for a moment, thinking it was just a phase or perhaps the result of all the holiday excitement. But as the night went on, the more I watched Emily, the more I realized I had been wrong. It wasn't just tiredness. Something deeper was happening. And that's when I heard it, the soft sound of her shivering. The first time I heard it, I thought it was just the fire crackling. But then I heard it again, and that's when I realized. She was cold. I looked around the room. The fire was roaring in the hearth. The room was warm, filled with the laughter of my family, yet Emily was shivering alone in her corner. I couldn't make sense of it. How could this be happening? Why didn't anyone else notice? I could feel my heart tighten in my chest, and I quickly walked over to her, kneeling down beside her. Emily, why are you so cold? I asked, my voice thick with concern. She looked up at me, her small eyes filled with a sadness I hadn't seen before. I don't know, Mommy. I just feel cold, she whispered. Her voice, so soft and fragile, broke something inside of me. It wasn't just the physical cold that was bothering her. It was something else, something I couldn't understand. I sat beside Emily for a moment, feeling the weight of her sadness pressing down on both of us. I could hear the laughter from the living room, the chatter about gifts and old family stories. But in that moment it felt like everything was miles away. As if I were the only one in the room with Emily. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from whatever was making her feel this way, but I didn't know how. Come here, I said softly, wrapping my arms around her, pulling her closer to me. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I could feel her trembling against me. For a few moments I just held her. I could feel the coldness in her body, the way her small frame seemed so frail against mine. It wasn't like her to be so withdrawn, so quiet. She was always the life of the party, the one who made everyone smile, who danced around the room with a sparkle in her eye. But tonight she was distant. Emily, talk to me, sweetheart. What's going on? I asked again, trying to get her to open up. She shifted slightly, her hands clutching the blanket around her as if she were trying to hold on to something stable, something familiar. I don't like it here, Mommy, she whispered, her voice trembling. Everyone's having fun and I'm just alone. I don't belong. Her words hit me harder than I could have ever imagined. How could she feel like that? I thought about the effort we'd put into making this Christmas special for her. The decorations, the gifts, the family gathering, it was all for her. But she didn't feel like she belonged? My heart ached and I pulled her even closer, brushing her hair away from her face. You do belong, Emily. You're the most important person here. We love you so much, you know that, I said, trying to reassure her, but the doubt in her eyes made me wonder if my words were enough. I gently kissed her forehead, holding her for a few more moments. Do you want to come with me? Let's sit by the tree, just the two of us. We can watch the lights and I'll tell you a story, I suggested, hoping to distract her from whatever was weighing on her heart. She didn't respond immediately, but after a moment she nodded. Together, we left the warmth of the living room and made our way to the small corner of the house where the Christmas tree stood. The soft glow of the lights reflected off the ornaments, casting a peaceful, soothing atmosphere in the room. It was quiet here, away from the noise and bustle of the family. But as we sat together, the silence didn't bring comfort. It only deepened the quiet sadness that seemed to have settled over my daughter. I looked at her closely, trying to understand. She wasn't the same happy child she used to be. What happened, sweetie? Did something happen with your cousins? Or maybe it's just too much today? I asked gently, not wanting to push too hard but hoping she'd open up. She shook her head, her eyes not meeting mine. No, Mommy. It's just, I don't know. I feel like no one sees me. Like I'm invisible. Her voice was small, barely above a whisper. Those words struck me in a way I didn't expect. I had always prided myself on being a good mom. I had always believed I could protect her from the world, from the things that hurt. But here she was telling me she felt invisible, and I had no idea how to fix it. I had been so focused on the decorations, the holiday cheer, and the things that made Christmas perfect in the eyes of the world. But I had failed to see the emotional distance growing between us. I hadn't noticed that despite all the external celebration, Emily was feeling unseen, unheard. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. This was not about the holiday, or the presents, or the fire burning in the hearth. It was about her, about my daughter, who was struggling in ways I hadn't understood. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry you feel this way. You're not invisible. You mean the world to me. To all of us, I said, my voice full of emotion. You're the brightest star in this house, and we need you here, always. She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with unshed tears. But I don't think anyone really sees me, Mom. Not like you do. They're all laughing and having fun. But I'm just here. Her voice trailed off as if she couldn't finish the thought. The pain in her words echoed in my heart. I had missed it. The very thing I'd wanted to protect her from. the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible. I hadn't even noticed it creeping in. I gently wiped away the tears that had begun to fall from her eyes. "I see you, Emily. I'll always see you no matter what," I promised, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't just the cold that had made her shiver that night. It was the emptiness she felt in a room full of people who loved her but couldn't reach her. And as I held her, I realized that I needed to do better. I needed to see her, truly see her, and not just on Christmas but every day. We sat by the tree for a long while, just the two of us. The silence in the room felt more peaceful now, and the soft glow of the Christmas lights seemed to soothe us both. Emily leaned against me, her small body warm against mine, and for the first time that evening, I felt a sense of calm settle over her. But the unease in my heart didn't fade. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something that went beyond just that moment. "I wish I could make everything better, sweetie," I whispered, gently brushing a lock of hair from her face. "I don't want you to feel like this." Emily looked up at me, her eyes wide and full of trust. "I know, Mommy," she said quietly, "but sometimes I just feel like I'm not enough, like I don't fit in." Her words pierced through me like a sharp, unexpected wind. How could she, a 5-year-old with so much love to give, feel like she wasn't enough? How could I have let her feel this way without even realizing it? I thought I was doing everything right, keeping up traditions, giving her everything I could. But what about her emotional world? What about the times when I wasn't paying attention, when I was caught up in the noise of life and didn't see the little things that mattered most to her? It hit me then. The truth was, I had been so focused on the external aspects of life, on making everything seem perfect for the holidays, that I had neglected the most important thing: my daughter's heart. The laughter around the fireplace, the bustle of the family. It all seemed like a backdrop now, something distant, something I couldn't quite connect with in that moment. The real story, the one that truly mattered, was happening in my arms, in Emily's quiet sadness. I kissed the top of her head, holding her close as I whispered, "You are more than enough, Emily. You are everything to me. I'm so sorry I didn't see this sooner." She didn't answer, but I could feel her body relax a little more as she sank deeper into my embrace. I wanted to fix everything for her, to make the pain go away, but I knew I couldn't do it all at once. It was going to take time, patience, and a lot of love. More than I had been giving her lately. "Do you want to go back inside?" I asked after a while. "We can join the family if you feel like it." Emily hesitated for a moment, looking back at the living room where the laughter still echoed from behind the door. She was torn, unsure whether she wanted to face the crowd or stay in the quiet warmth of our little corner. "I'm not sure, Mommy," she replied softly. "I don't want to be alone, but I don't want to feel invisible either." Her words hit me like a wave. She didn't just need physical presence. She needed to feel seen. She needed to know she mattered, that her emotions and her feelings were just as important as anyone else's. I realized then that the problem wasn't the Christmas celebration or the family gathering. It was the fact that I hadn't been there for her in the way she needed me to be. I had let the noise of the world drown out her voice, her quiet plea for connection. I took her hand, squeezing it gently. "You will never be invisible to me, Emily. Promise. We'll always find time for each other, even in the busiest moments. And when you need to talk, when you need me, I'll be here. No one is more important to me than you." Her face softened as she looked up at me, a small, grateful smile beginning to form. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered. "I love you too, sweetheart," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. After a moment of quiet, we stood up together, hand in hand, and walked back toward the living room. I knew that Christmas wasn't just about gifts or food or the decorations. It was about the moments that truly mattered, the quiet conversations, the shared laughter, and the love we gave each other. As we stepped back into the room, I realized that what Emily and I needed most wasn't the perfect holiday. It was each other, present and real, in the middle of the mess and chaos that life sometimes brings. We joined the rest of the family, but this time it felt different. The laughter still filled the room, but now there was something deeper in the air. I could feel Emily beside me, her hand resting in mine, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The next few days after that Christmas Eve passed in a blur. There was something in the air, a tension that I couldn't quite place. Emily seemed a little better, but I couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't quite right. It wasn't just the way she had looked at me on Christmas night. It was the way she had withdrawn from everything. From her cousins, from the family, from the simple joys that used to light up her face. I kept thinking back to the promises I'd made her. About always being there, about always seeing her. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I hadn't really been there, not in the way she needed. I had been so focused on making everything around us perfect, on keeping up with the demands of the holiday season, that I had missed the most important part. I had missed her. A week later, things hadn't changed much. Emily still seemed distant. The way she avoided eye contact, the way she stayed in her room longer than usual, it wasn't like her. First, I tried to shake it off. She was still adjusting to the holiday season, still processing everything. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I tried to make up for the moments I'd missed. I took her out for ice cream one afternoon, just the two of us. I thought maybe we could have some fun together just like we used to. But as we sat there, Emily barely touched her ice cream. She looked at it for a moment, then pushed it aside. "I'm not hungry," she said, her voice barely audible. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. This wasn't like her. My daughter had always been so full of life, so full of excitement over even the smallest things. But now it felt like she was slipping away, like she was shutting herself off from everything. "Emily, what's going on?" I asked gently, trying to sound casual, though my heart was pounding. "You've always loved ice cream. Is something wrong?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared at the table, her fingers tracing circles in the condensation on her glass. It was as if she was lost in her own thoughts, in a place I couldn't reach. "I don't know, Mommy," she said softly. "I just feel different. Like I don't fit in anywhere. Not even here." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I hadn't expected that. How could she feel like that? How could she feel like she didn't belong, not in our family, not in our home? It was a simple statement, but it carried so much weight. I tried to hide the panic in my voice as I responded. "Of course you belong, Emily. You're my world. You mean everything to me. You know that, right?" She nodded slowly but didn't meet my eyes. "I just don't feel like anyone notices me," she whispered. "Like when everyone's talking and laughing, no one really sees me. It's like I'm invisible." Her words echoed in my mind long after we left the ice cream shop. It was like she had taken everything I had tried to ignore and put it right in front of me. I had thought I was doing everything I could for her. I had thought that by making Christmas special, by spending time with the family, I was showing her how much I loved her. But I had missed something. I had missed her. That night, I sat in the living room after Emily had gone to bed, the weight of the conversation heavy in my chest. The house was quiet, save for the occasional crackle of the fire in the hearth. The Christmas decorations were still up, the tree still standing in the corner, but the magic of the season felt distant. It wasn't just about the holiday anymore. It was about something deeper, something more important. I couldn't help but wonder where I had gone wrong. How had I missed the signs? How had I let her feel like this? And more importantly, how could I fix it? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't just failing her emotionally. I was failing her as a mother. I hadn't given her the attention she needed. I hadn't listened to her in the way she needed me to. But I wasn't ready to admit that just yet. I didn't want to face the truth of how much I had missed. So, instead of confronting it, I kept myself busy. I kept the family engaged, focused on keeping everything running smoothly. But inside, I knew I was running out of time. Something needed to change, and fast. As the days passed, I tried to reconnect with Emily in ways I hadn't before. I planned more one-on-one moments, hoping they would bring her out of her shell and bring back the lively, joyful girl she once was. But no matter what I did, it felt like she was slipping further away from me. She'd smile politely when I asked her about her day, but it was always short, always distant. When I asked her if she wanted to play or watch a movie together, she would nod, but the enthusiasm wasn't there. It was like she was just going through the motions, not really present. It made my heart ache to see her like this. I had always been there for her. I had always prided myself on being the kind of mom who could read her child, who could tell when something was wrong just by the way she looked at me. But now I was lost. Emily was a mystery to me, and no matter how hard I tried to understand, the more I felt like I was failing her. One evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I overheard a conversation between my sister and her husband in the kitchen. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but their words hit me like a wave. "She's not the same, is she?" my sister asked quietly, her voice tinged with concern. "I don't think so," her husband replied. "She's so quiet these days, always off by herself. I don't know what's going on, but it's like she's withdrawing." I froze in my tracks, my hands trembling as I wiped down the counter. They were talking about Emily. The realization that others had noticed it too hit me like a punch in the gut. I wasn't imagining it. This wasn't just something I was feeling, it was real. Emily was changing and I wasn't sure how to stop it. I wanted to rush in and ask them what they thought was going on, to explain that I was already worried, but I didn't. Instead, I stood there, feeling more helpless than ever. The silence between me and Emily had stretched out for too long. I could no longer ignore it. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat by the fireplace alone, the warmth of the fire not quite reaching my soul. The house felt too quiet, too still. Emily was in her room, asleep or pretending to be, and I found myself once again lost in the weight of the silence. I knew I had to talk to her. It wasn't enough to just offer her distractions or quiet comforts. I needed to understand what was going on inside her mind, what was causing her to pull away from everything and everyone. The problem was I didn't know where to start. How do you begin to break through the walls your child has built, even when you don't fully understand why they're there in the first place? I walked down the hallway to Emily's room. Her door was slightly ajar, and I stood there for a moment watching her sleep. She looked so small, so fragile. The peaceful expression on her face made my heart ache even more. How could I have missed this? How could I have been so caught up in everything else that I hadn't seen how much she was hurting? Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open quietly and sat on the edge of her bed. She stirred slightly but didn't wake up. I reached out to gently brush the hair from her face, just as I had done so many times before. It was a simple gesture, one that should have been comforting, but tonight it felt like I was trying to touch something I couldn't reach. "Emily," I whispered softly, hoping she would wake up. "Can we talk?" She didn't stir at first, but after a moment, she slowly opened her eyes, blinking in the dim light. For a few seconds she didn't say anything. She just looked at me with those big, soft eyes, and I could see the confusion there, the hesitation. "Mommy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I could feel my heart break at the sound of her voice. So small, so vulnerable. "Sweetheart, I need you to talk to me," I said gently, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. "I know something's been bothering you. I just want to understand. Please tell me what's going on." She didn't answer immediately. She just lay there, staring up at me with that distant look in her eyes. I could see she was torn. She wanted to tell me, but the words weren't coming easily. It was as if she didn't know how to express the weight she was carrying inside. "I don't know, Mommy," she finally whispered, her voice trembling. "I just feel like I don't belong. I don't know how to explain it. Everyone's always so happy and I don't feel like I fit in." The words stung, but they also made something inside me click. This wasn't about the holidays. It wasn't about gifts or laughter or even the family. It was about something deeper. A sense of not being seen, not being heard, and not feeling like she was part of the world around her. I hadn't understood that before. But now, as she lay there in her bed, looking up at me with that sadness in her eyes, I finally understood. "I'm so sorry, Emily," I said softly, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I should have seen it. I should have been there for you." She shook her head slowly, as if she was trying to convince herself that it wasn't that simple. "It's not your fault, Mommy," she said, her voice barely audible. "I just don't know how to fix it." I didn't know how to fix it either. But at that moment I realized that I had to be there for her, more than I ever had before. She needed me to truly see her, to listen to her, and to help her navigate through this storm of emotions she was going through. I wasn't sure how to do that, but I knew that I had to try. And so, as I sat there beside her, I made a promise to myself that I would no longer ignore the small signs, the quiet moments that spoke louder than any words could. I would see her. I would hear her. And I would do whatever it took to help her feel like she truly belonged. The days that followed were filled with an overwhelming mixture of emotions. I had finally opened the door to Emily's heart, but the conversation we had that night was just the beginning. I realized that this wasn't something that would be solved overnight. The damage that had been done, whatever it was, had lingered for a while. I couldn't fix it with a simple conversation or a few comforting words. It was deeper than that. Over the next few weeks, I tried to stay present for her. I made an effort to check in with her every day, to ask how she was feeling, and to truly listen to her. Not just with my ears but with my heart. But every time I thought I was getting closer, she seemed to retreat a little further. The small smiles she used to give, the bright spark in her eyes, they were gone. One afternoon, as I was preparing lunch in the kitchen, I heard a soft knock on the door. It was one of Emily's cousins, a little girl named Lily. She came over every week to play, but today she looked a little concerned. "Is Emily home?" she asked, glancing behind her to see if Emily was around. I nodded, wiping my hands on a towel. "She's upstairs, I think. Is everything okay?" Lily hesitated for a moment, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. I don't know. She doesn't want to play anymore. She just sits in her room all the time. She doesn't even want to play with me." I felt a tightness in my chest. I had seen it too, Emily's withdrawal from everyone, from her friends and from her family. But hearing it from Lily, hearing how even Emily's cousin had noticed the change, made it all too real. This wasn't just a phase. It wasn't something that would go away on its own. I walked upstairs to Emily's room, my heart heavy with worry. When I knocked on the door, there was no response at first. I knocked again, a little louder this time. Finally, she opened the door, and the sight of her hit me like a cold wave. Her room was dim, the curtains pulled shut, and Emily was sitting by the window, staring out at the rain. She didn't turn around when she heard me enter. Her shoulders hunched as if she were trying to make herself smaller, to disappear into the shadows. "Sweetheart," I said softly, walking over to her. "Can we talk?" She didn't look at me. "I'm fine, Mommy," she said quietly. "I don't want to talk." I sat down beside her, my hand resting gently on hers. "Emily, I know you're not fine. I know you're hurting. You don't have to go through this alone." She pulled her hand away from mine, the gesture so small yet so full of meaning. It felt like a wall had gone up between us again, and I didn't know how to break it down. "I don't need anyone, Mommy," she muttered. "I just want to be left alone." I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to tell her that she wasn't alone, that she would never be alone. But the truth was, I didn't know what she was going through. I didn't understand why she felt this way, and that scared me. The worst part was that I had let it go on for so long, thinking it would pass, thinking that maybe it was just a phase. But it wasn't. It was real, and it was breaking her. I sat in silence, letting her words hang in the air. I could hear the rain tapping against the window, the soft, rhythmic sound of the world outside, but inside, everything felt so still, so quiet. I had no idea what to say or do, but I knew I couldn't give up on her. "I know you don't want to talk, but I'm not going to leave until you do," I said firmly, my voice steady even though my heart was breaking. "I'm not going to give up on you, Emily. You're too important to me. I know you're hurting and I want to help you, but you have to let me in." For the longest time there was no response. The silence stretched out, and I almost thought she was going to ignore me completely. But then slowly, she turned her head to face me, her eyes still filled with that same sadness. I don't know how to fix it," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I used to be happy, but now I feel like everything's falling apart." Her words shattered me. I had known she was struggling, but hearing her say it out loud, hearing her admit the depth of her pain, made it all the more real. She wasn't just a little sad. She wasn't just going through a phase. She was drowning in her emotions, and I had failed to see it sooner. I reached out and gently pulled her into my arms, holding her close. "It's okay, sweetie. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not have all the answers right now, but we'll figure it out together. You don't have to fix everything on your own." She clung to me, her small body trembling with emotion. And in that moment I realized that I couldn't just fix this. I couldn't just wave a magic wand and make everything better. But I could be there for her in every way she needed me to be. I could listen, I could hold her, and I could help her navigate through the darkness she was feeling. I wasn't sure where to go from here. I wasn't sure how to help her find her way back to the light. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not ever. The days after our conversation didn't bring any immediate change, but they were the beginning of something. Slowly, Emily began to open up more, even if only in small ways. It was a delicate process, one step forward, two steps back. But I was determined. I had to be. It wasn't just about getting Emily to smile again. It was about helping her find herself, to make her feel heard, seen, and valued. That was the first thing I needed to fix. We started doing things together, just the two of us, without the pressure of trying to make everything perfect. I stopped pushing her to be happy, to be the Emily I used to know. I realized that I couldn't force her to feel better. But what I could do was be patient, be present, and let her know that it was okay to feel what she was feeling. One afternoon we went to the park. It wasn't much, just a walk around the lake, the sound of birds chirping, and the gentle breeze in the air. But it was a start. Emily didn't say much at first, but after a while she began to speak, little by little. "I used to love coming here," she said, her voice quieter than usual. "Remember when I used to run all the way to the swings?" I nodded, smiling softly. "Of course I remember. You'd always be the first one to get there." She gave me a small smile, the first one in days. It wasn't much, but it was something. And in that moment I realized that I had been so caught up in fixing things that I hadn't noticed how small steps, how little moments of connection could mean so much more. As we sat on the park bench together, I tried not to push her, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in my chest. Something was still off. Emily wasn't as withdrawn as she had been, but there was still a distance between us. The smile she gave me wasn't the same bright, radiant one I used to see, but rather a fragile one, like she was testing the waters, unsure whether it was safe to let go again. We spent the next few weeks doing more of these quiet, simple things, painting, baking cookies together, even just sitting side by side without talking much. And yet, as the days passed, there was still something hanging in the air, something unspoken. I knew Emily wasn't okay, but she was so reluctant to talk about it. And while I could feel that something was still breaking her, she refused to let me in completely. One evening after dinner, I was cleaning up in the kitchen when I heard Emily talking to herself in her room. It was quiet at first, almost like a murmur. But as I listened, I realized that she wasn't just talking to herself. She was crying. I didn't hesitate. I rushed to her room, knocking softly before entering. She was sitting on her bed, her arms wrapped around her knees, tears streaming down her face. I rushed over to her, kneeling beside her. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" "Emily, I can't tell you when it will get better," I said softly. "But I can tell you this. No matter how long it takes, I will be here for you. You are not alone. We'll take this one step at a time and we'll get through it together. You are never lost to me." She looked up at me, her tear-streaked face softening as she nodded slowly. I kissed her forehead and held her close, feeling the weight of the moment. I didn't have all the answers, but I did know that love, time, and patience could help us heal. As the night wore on, I stayed with her, holding her until she finally fell asleep. I could feel the tension in her body slowly ease, but I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The emotional scars she was carrying and the weight of her fears and uncertainties wouldn't disappear overnight. But I also knew that we were on the right path. We were finally facing it together. And as I sat there in the quiet of her room, I made another promise. This time it wasn't just to Emily. It was to myself. I would do better. I would never let the noise of life drown out the things that mattered most. I would see her, truly see her, every single day. The next few weeks passed in a slow, emotional dance between silence and moments of connection. Emily seemed to be in a constant state of flux. Sometimes she would smile, laugh even, as though she were pulling herself up out of the darkness. Other times she would retreat again, pulling away and shutting herself off as though afraid to face the world. I watched her, unable to help, desperate to understand the turmoil inside her. I tried to find ways to make her feel heard. I took her out for walks in the park again, let her choose the movies we watched, and even tried art therapy. Anything that might help her express herself. But every time I felt like we were making progress, the wall between us would rise again, higher than before. One evening after dinner, we sat down together on the couch to watch a movie. Emily curled up beside me, her head resting on my shoulder. She didn't speak much, but she didn't have to. I could feel the tension in her body, the unease in the air. As the movie played on, I glanced down at her. "Do you want to talk about anything?" I asked, my voice soft, trying not to intrude. Emily shifted slightly, but she didn't pull away. I don't know how to fix myself, Mommy, she whispered, her voice small and fragile. I don't know what's wrong with me. Why can't I just be happy again? The question hung in the air between us, unanswered. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that happiness would come back soon. But I knew better than to promise something I couldn't guarantee. I knew that healing wasn't something that could be rushed or forced. I wish I could just make it all go away, Emily, I said, my voice trembling with emotion. I wish I could fix everything for you, but I can't. What I can do is be here for you, every step of the way. And I'll keep loving you through all of this, even when it feels like it's too much. She didn't answer right away, but I could feel her relax a little, as though my words had given her some comfort, even if only for a moment. It wasn't much, but it was something. The weeks turned into months, and still Emily's struggle continued, though it had shifted. There were days when she seemed to make progress, days when she smiled more freely or joined in conversations with the family. And then there were days when I could see the sadness creeping back in. Her eyes clouded with confusion, her words hesitant. It was like a constant tug of war inside her, between the child she used to be and the one she was trying to find. And then one morning, out of the blue, something happened. Emily came running downstairs with a huge smile on her face, holding something in her hands. One evening, as I tucked Emily into bed, she looked up at me with those same big eyes that had once been so full of joy. Mommy, she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. I'm scared. Scared of what? I asked gently, brushing a lock of hair from her face. I'm scared that I'll never be the same again, she said. I don't want to feel this way forever. Her words were filled with so much fear, so much uncertainty. And in that moment, I realized that she wasn't asking for answers. She wasn't looking for a quick fix. She just needed to know that it was okay to feel this way, that it was okay to be afraid, and that it wouldn't last forever. You don't have to be the same, Emily, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're allowed to change, to feel what you're feeling. And no matter, Mommy, I made this, she exclaimed, her voice full of excitement. She handed me a small lopsided clay heart. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful to me. I took it in my hands, my heart swelling with emotion. It's perfect, sweetheart. Thank you. I made it for you, she said, her eyes shining. I thought maybe you'd like it. I wanted to make something good for once. My heart nearly broke at her words. She was trying. She was trying so hard, and that's all I could ask for. As the days went on, Emily's moments of light seemed to grow a little more frequent. She started sharing more with me, small things at first, like how she felt when she was at school or what she thought about her friends. It wasn't easy for her. The walls she had built around herself were still there, but now she was beginning to tear them down brick by brick. And I realized that I had been doing the same. I had been slowly breaking down the walls I had built around myself, the walls of guilt and shame. I had blamed myself for not seeing the signs, for not understanding what Emily was going through. But I had learned something important in the process. I couldn't change the past. All I could do was be there for her now, be the mother she needed in this moment, and be ready for whatever came next. What? I will always be here with you. We'll get through this together, one step at a time. She gave me a small, soft smile, the kind I hadn't seen in months. It wasn't a smile of complete happiness, but it was real. It was a start. As I kissed her goodnight and turned off the light, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. We weren't fixed, not yet. But we were moving forward, and that was all I could ask for. The change, if you could call it that, came on an ordinary Saturday morning. It was the kind of morning where everything seemed calm, almost too calm. The sun was shining softly through the curtains, the air fresh with the promise of spring. I had been making breakfast, a routine I had grown so used to, when I heard Emily's voice calling from the living room. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? Her voice sounded different, quieter than usual, but there was something else in it, something that made my heart skip a beat. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked into the living room. Emily was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest, her eyes looking down. She seemed almost fragile. I sat beside her, my heart racing. What's on your mind, sweetie? She hesitated for a moment, her fingers fiddling with the hem of her shirt. I've been thinking a lot about everything. I could feel the weight of her words even before she spoke them. I had been waiting for this moment, the moment when she would finally tell me what was going on inside her. The moment when she would let me into that place she had kept hidden for so long. "Go ahead," I said gently, giving her the space she needed. "I don't feel like I can keep pretending anymore," she said quietly, her voice wavering. "I don't want to feel like this, but I don't know how to stop." Her words struck me deep and heavy. She wasn't just talking about the sadness and the loneliness she had been carrying. She was talking about the weight of everything, the fear, the confusion, the feeling of being lost, and now at last she was admitting it. She was finally acknowledging it after months of silence, after weeks of retreating into herself. For the first time in a long while, I felt the distance between us begin to close. It was a slow, painful realization, but it was also a turning point. Emily was no longer holding everything inside. She was starting to let me in. "Sweetheart," I whispered, my voice filled with emotion. "You don't have to pretend. You never have to pretend with me. Whatever you're feeling, I'm here to listen. I'm here to help." She looked at me then, her eyes full of vulnerability. "I don't want you to think I don't love you, Mommy. I do. I don't know how to feel better." I could see the fear in her eyes, the fear that she was broken, that she was somehow unfixable. And in that moment I realized something important. Emily wasn't just asking for help with her sadness. She was asking for permission to feel what she was feeling. She needed to know that it was okay to be broken, to be imperfect. "You don't have to fix everything, Emily," I said softly, my voice filled with understanding. "It's okay to not have all the answers right now. It's okay to not be okay. But we'll figure it out together." She nodded slowly, her eyes still locked on mine. And for the first time in a long time I saw a glimmer of hope. It was faint, but it was there. "I think I need help," she said, almost shyly. "I don't want to feel like this anymore. But I don't know how." Her words were simple, but they were everything. They were the turning point I had been waiting for. The moment when Emily finally acknowledged the depth of her pain and asked for help. She wasn't expecting me to have all the answers. She just needed to know that she wasn't alone in it. "I'll help you, sweetie," I said, my heart overflowing with love for her. "We'll take this one step at a time. We'll find a way to make it better." It wasn't a magical solution. There wasn't an instant fix to the pain Emily had been feeling, to the struggles she had been going through in silence. But in that moment I knew that we had crossed a line. We had crossed from isolation into connection, from silence into understanding. The turning point wasn't just Emily reaching out to me. It was also about me realizing that I couldn't fix everything on my own. I couldn't take away her pain, but I could be there for her as she worked through it. I could offer her love, support, and patience, and together we would figure it out. The days following that conversation felt different. I could see Emily trying in her quiet way to open up more. She started asking more questions, sharing her thoughts and her fears. It wasn't always easy for her, but I could see the effort she was putting in. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do the wrong thing. One afternoon after school, Emily came to me with a notebook in her hand. She looked nervous, almost hesitant, as she stood in front of me, biting her lip. "Mom, I've been writing in this," she said softly, holding it out to me. "I don't know if I should show you, but I think I need to." I took the notebook from her gently, my heart racing with anticipation. I wasn't sure what I was about to read, but I knew that it was important to her. It was her way of expressing things she couldn't say aloud. I opened the notebook, and the first page was filled with small, neat handwriting. It was a letter, written in the form of a diary entry. As I began to read, I could feel my chest tighten. Emily had poured her heart onto the pages, her fears, her confusion, and her sense of emptiness. "I feel like I don't belong anywhere. I don't know who I am anymore. I used to be happy, but now everything just feels heavy. I want to feel better, but I don't know how." I could barely breathe as I read the words. They were raw, honest, and painful. I hadn't realized how much Emily was carrying inside her. I hadn't known the extent of her struggle, the depth of her sadness. But in this notebook, she had given me a glimpse into her soul, and it was both heartbreaking and beautiful. I looked up at her, and she was standing there, her eyes downcast, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her sleeve. "I don't want you to be mad or disappointed," she whispered. I just didn't know how to say it. I set the notebook down on the table and pulled her into a tight hug. Emily, I'm not mad. I'm not disappointed. I'm so proud of you for sharing this with me, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You're being so brave by opening up, and that's the first step. I promise you we'll work through this together. You don't have to carry this all by yourself. She hugged me back, her small body trembling slightly. I could feel the weight of the words she had written, the things she had been holding in. It wasn't just about being sad or feeling lost. It was about the fear that had taken root deep inside her, the fear that she would never be able to find her way out of it. And the only way she could begin to heal was by letting it all out, by being vulnerable enough to ask for help. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, reading through her notebook and talking about what she had written. I didn't rush her and didn't try to give her solutions right away. I just listened. I listened to the fear in her voice and to the sadness in her words, and I held her close as she slowly began to make sense of it all. It was slow progress, but it was progress nonetheless. Emily wasn't fully healed, and I knew that it wasn't going to happen overnight. But this moment, this turning point, felt like the beginning of something important. It felt like the first crack in the wall she had built around herself. And with every word she spoke, with every tear she shed, I could feel her starting to let go, starting to believe that it was okay to feel what she was feeling. I also realized something important about myself that day. I had been so focused on fixing things, on trying to make everything okay, that I had overlooked something crucial. Emily didn't need me to fix her. She needed me to be present, to be patient, and to listen without judgment. She needed me to hold space for her emotions, even when they were hard to bear. And I had been so caught up in the idea of fixing her that I had missed the fact that she was already doing the hard work of healing on her own. She just needed me by her side. That afternoon, as we sat together in the living room, Emily turned to me and said, "Thank you for listening, Mom. I feel a little bit better now." I smiled, brushing a tear from my eye. "You don't have to thank me, sweetheart. I'll always listen. I'm always here." For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. Emily wasn't okay, not yet, but I could see the first spark of hope, the first flicker of light breaking through the darkness. And that was enough for me. The weeks following that afternoon felt like a delicate balance. Emily had started to open up more, but I could see the fear in her eyes whenever she spoke about what she was feeling. It was like she was standing on the edge of something, unsure whether she could truly cross over to the other side of her pain. She had started to trust me again, but I knew the road ahead would be long. Healing wasn't something that could happen in a few weeks or even a few months. It was going to take time. One Friday afternoon after school, Emily came to me with a worried look on her face. Her hands were fidgeting with the hem of her jacket, and her eyes were cast downward, avoiding mine. I could tell she had something on her mind, but she wasn't sure how to say it. "Mom," she began, her voice small. "There's something I need to tell you. Something that happened at school." My heart clenched in my chest. I had been waiting for this moment, the moment when the full weight of her struggles would come crashing down. I didn't know if she was ready to talk about it, but I knew I had to be ready to listen no matter what she said. "Go ahead, sweetie," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm listening." She took a deep breath, and I could see her struggling to find the right words. "There's this girl in my class. Her name is Sarah, and she's been bullying me. Not in a big way, but in little ways. She makes fun of me, calls me names, and says I'm weird. And it makes me feel bad. It makes me feel like I'm not good enough." Her words hit me like a cold gust of wind. I hadn't expected this. My mind raced as I processed what she had said. Bullying. It was a word that I had always dreaded. A word that I never wanted to hear connected to my daughter. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice filled with concern. "I didn't want you to worry," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought maybe it would stop if I ignored it. But it hasn't." I sat there in silence for a moment, my heart breaking for her. I had been so focused on helping her with her internal struggles, the ones she had been hiding from me, that I hadn't considered the external ones, the ones that came from other people. I hadn't realized that Emily was facing something beyond herself. She was facing the cruelty of others, and that was something I couldn't protect her from. I pulled her close to me, wrapping my arms around her tightly. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have known. I should have been more aware of what was going on." Emily sniffled, her head resting against my shoulder. I don't want anyone to think I'm weak. I don't want to be the girl who gets picked on. You're not weak, Emily, I said firmly. You are one of the strongest people I know, and I'll make sure that this stops. No one has the right to treat you like that. We'll take care of it. I could feel her nodding against me, but I knew the damage had already been done. The words that Sarah had said to her, the teasing, the mockery, had taken root in Emily's heart. It wasn't just the pain of being called names that hurt. It was the feeling of being less than, of being unworthy, of being made to feel like she didn't belong. The next day I called the school. I spoke to the principal and made it clear that I wasn't going to let this continue. I didn't know if it would make a difference, but I couldn't just sit back and allow my daughter to endure this in silence. I knew I had to be her voice, just as I had been for so many other things. That evening I sat down with Emily again. I spoke to your school today. I told her. I made sure that they know what's been happening. And I want you to know that you don't have to go through this alone. We're going to make sure this stops. She looked at me, her eyes wide, a mix of relief and fear in her expression. Do you think it'll really stop? I don't know, sweetie, I said honestly. But I do know that we're going to fight this together. And I'll always be here for you. The days that followed were a mixture of relief and anxiety. The school took immediate action, speaking with Sarah and her parents. I wasn't sure if it would work, if it would be enough to stop the bullying once and for all, but Emily seemed to breathe a little easier. She wasn't as withdrawn and wasn't as quiet. There was a small spark of hope in her eyes that I hadn't seen in weeks. But that spark didn't mean everything was okay. It didn't mean that Emily had miraculously healed. It was a long road ahead. But for the first time in months, I saw a glimmer of the girl she used to be. The girl who laughed without holding back. The girl who believed in herself without question. It wasn't fixed, but it was better. And sometimes better was enough. In the weeks that followed, I watched Emily as she started to regain a little piece of herself. She wasn't the same as before. Not yet anyway, but there were signs of the girl I once knew. The girl who used to laugh at the silliest things. The girl who used to jump up to greet me at the door after school. Her eyes full of excitement and stories. The girl who, despite the challenges life threw at her, always seemed to bounce back with a smile. But I knew this wasn't the same as before. Emily was still carrying a weight. A burden that wasn't easy to shake off. She was healing, but it wasn't a quick or simple process. I could see her trying, but I could also see the cracks. The fear that had taken root inside her hadn't disappeared overnight. It was still there, lurking in the background, ready to rear its ugly head when she least expected it. I began to notice small things, little signs that Emily was still struggling. She would still avoid eye contact sometimes and still retreat into her room when things felt too overwhelming. And there were moments when she would suddenly burst into tears, caught off guard by a memory or a feeling that she wasn't prepared for. One afternoon we were sitting together at the kitchen table doing some homework. The house was quiet, the kind of peaceful silence that only comes when everyone is absorbed in their own world. I was helping Emily with a math problem when I noticed her brow furrow, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her pencil. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked, my voice soft with concern. She looked up at me, and for a moment, I saw that familiar look of uncertainty in her eyes. "I don't know, Mom," she said quietly. "I keep thinking about everything, about how things used to be, how they aren't the same now. And I don't know if I can keep pretending that everything's fine." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. It wasn't that I hadn't known this moment would come. I knew Emily wasn't going to magically bounce back from everything that had happened. But hearing her admit it, hearing her acknowledge the struggle she was still facing, made my heart ache. "You don't have to pretend, Emily," I said softly, setting aside the homework I was helping her with. "You don't have to pretend that everything's fine when it's not. I know you're still hurting. And that's okay. We don't have to have all the answers right now. What matters is that you don't have to carry it alone." She bit her lip, her eyes filled with emotion. "I just feel so different, Mom. I don't feel like me anymore. I don't know who I am, and I don't know how to get back to how things were." The words stung, but I knew they were true. Emily had lost herself in a way. She had been through something so painful that it had left her questioning who she was and what she was capable of. The sadness that had taken hold of her wasn't something that could be wiped away with a few comforting words. It was a process, a journey, and we were both on it together. You don't have to be the same, Emily, I said, my voice full of warmth and sincerity. You don't have to go back to how things were before. You're allowed to change. You're allowed to grow, and even when it's hard, I'll be here. Every step of the way. We'll find who you are now together. She nodded slowly, her eyes searching mine as if trying to find reassurance. I could see that she was trying to believe me, but I also saw the uncertainty in her gaze. She wasn't ready to fully accept it yet. The fear of the unknown, the fear of who she might become, still haunted her. And I understood that fear. I understood it because I, too, was afraid. Afraid of not being able to fix her, afraid of not being enough. I was scared that, despite all the love I had to offer, I might not be able to help her find her way back to herself. But then I remembered something. The love, the patience, the support. I had been giving her those things all along. It wasn't about fixing her. It was about being there, in the mess and the confusion, with her every step of the way. And I knew deep down that we would find our way through this. Maybe not all at once, but one small step at a time. That evening, Emily curled up next to me on the couch, something she hadn't done in a long time. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight of the air between us lift. She didn't say anything, but I could feel the comfort in her presence. She was here with me just as I was here for her. I don't have all the answers, I whispered, but I'm here. And that's enough for today. She didn't answer, but the warmth of her small hand in mine was all the answer I needed. We still had a long way to go, but in that moment we were closer than we had been in a long time. We had reached another turning point. And even though the road ahead was uncertain, we had each other. That was all that mattered. It wasn't long after that moment on the couch that I began to see even more subtle changes in Emily. The next day, she asked if she could invite Lily over for a playdate. It was a small request, but it felt like a huge step forward. For weeks, Emily had kept to herself, not wanting to engage with anyone, even her closest friends. But now she was reaching out. She was starting to reconnect with the world around her. Lily came over, and the two girls spent the afternoon together, laughing and playing. I watched from the kitchen, my heart swelling with a mixture of pride and relief. I had seen Emily was so lost and so distant, and to see her now engaged and alive, even if only for a few hours, was a reminder of how far she had come. That night, after Lily had gone home and the house had quieted down, Emily came to me, holding something in her hands. It was another notebook, a different one from the first. I wrote something today, she said, sitting down beside me on the couch. I didn't know if I should show you, but I think I want to. My heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the moment where she would share the next step of her healing journey. And I knew I needed to be open, to listen, and to understand. She handed me the notebook and I opened it to the first page. It was a letter just like the first one, but this one was different. This one was filled with hope, filled with small moments of clarity that hadn't been there before. I'm not okay yet, but I'm trying, it read. I don't know what's ahead, but I want to keep going. I want to keep fighting because I know I can be happy again. Maybe I'm not there yet, but I'm getting closer. And I'm not doing it alone anymore. I have you. I could feel my breath catch as I read her words. The letter wasn't perfect, it was raw, it was messy, and it was exactly where Emily was in that moment. It wasn't about being completely healed. It was about starting to believe again. It was about knowing that, despite everything, she wasn't alone in her struggle. She was starting to accept that it was okay to take her time, to go at her own pace. But most importantly, she was starting to understand that healing didn't mean having all the answers. It meant being willing to ask for help, to lean on those who loved her, and to keep moving forward, even when the road was unclear. I set the notebook down on the table and pulled her into my arms. Emily, this is beautiful. And I'm so proud of you for sharing it with me. She hugged me tightly, her small arms wrapped around me as if she was trying to hold on to everything she had just shared. I think I'm ready now, Mom, she whispered. Ready to let go of the fear. I'm still scared, but I know I'm not alone anymore. And in that moment I realized that this was the turning point. Not just for Emily, but for me as well. I had spent so much time worrying about how to fix everything, how to make everything right. But the truth was, there was no fixing her. There was only being there, offering her love and support, and letting her find her way one step at a time. It wasn't about erasing the pain, the fear, or the uncertainty. It was about moving forward despite it all. It was about learning to live with the struggles, the scars, and the imperfections, while still believing that there was hope, that there was a future worth fighting for. I sat with her that night, long after the rest of the house had gone quiet. We talked about the future, about the things Emily wanted to try, new hobbies, new friends, and new ways of looking at the world. She wasn't sure of everything yet, and that was okay. She was still healing, still finding her way. But for the first time, she seemed at peace with it. She knew she wasn't alone in the struggle. As the night drew to a close and I tucked Emily into bed, she turned to me with a soft smile. "I think I can do this, Mom," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. "I think I can be okay." And as I kissed her goodnight, I knew that this was just the beginning. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I also knew that we had already taken the hardest step. The step toward healing, toward understanding, and toward love. I stood in the doorway watching her drift off to sleep, and I realized that I wasn't just watching her heal. I was healing too. I had learned something important, that love wasn't about fixing the broken pieces. It was about being there, supporting each other, and giving each other the time and space to heal at our own pace. And as I turned off the light and closed the door softly behind me, I knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. Over the next few months, Emily continued to heal, but it wasn't a linear journey. There were days when I could see her joy and her curiosity spark like it used to, and then there were days when the sadness crept back in, quiet and insidious. But the difference now was that she knew how to ask for help, how to voice her fears, and how to lean on me when the weight of it all became too much to carry alone. We continued with the small moments of connection, painting, reading together, even just sitting in silence with a cup of tea. It wasn't about forcing happiness or pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. It was about giving her the space to feel her emotions without shame, without fear of judgment. I had stopped trying to fix everything, and instead I focused on being present. I had started therapy myself, something I had been avoiding for far too long. It wasn't just about helping Emily anymore. It was about me learning how to be a better parent, how to support her without losing myself in the process. I needed to understand my own fears, my own struggles, so that I could truly be there for her. There were moments when Emily would talk to me about school, her friends, or what was bothering her. Other times she would sit in silence, lost in her thoughts, and I had learned to respect that too. She didn't always need to talk, and sometimes just sitting with her was enough. I could see the walls she had built slowly coming down piece by piece. It wasn't quick and it wasn't easy, but it was happening. One afternoon, Emily came to me with a notebook in hand. I'd seen this notebook before, the one where she had written her fears and struggles. But this time when she handed it to me, there was a new sense of purpose in her eyes. "I wrote something new, Mom," she said quietly. "I thought you might want to see it." I opened the notebook, my heart beating faster in anticipation. It was another letter, but this time it was different. The words were more confident, more hopeful, and more like the Emily I had known before all of this began. "I'm not perfect. I'm still scared sometimes, but I'm learning that it's okay to feel that way. I'm learning that it's okay to ask for help, and I'm learning that I don't have to carry everything on my own. I'm getting stronger even when I don't feel like it, and I'm proud of who I am becoming. I'm ready to keep going." I blinked back tears as I read her words. This wasn't the same girl who had sat on my lap, terrified of the future, unsure of herself. This was a girl who had begun to find her strength, her voice, and her place in the world. It wasn't a finished journey, but it was a significant step forward. I hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth of her embrace and the strength in her small frame. "I'm so proud of you, Emily. So proud of how far you've come." She smiled softly, and for the first time in a long time, I saw that spark of light in her eyes. It wasn't the same brightness it had been before, but it was enough. It was real. And I knew that she was finally beginning to believe in herself again. We still had a long way to go. There were moments when Emily would still retreat, when the shadows of her fears would creep back in, but now we had the tools to face them. We had the understanding, the patience, and the love to work through it together. As Emily continued to make progress, I could see her gradually finding her own rhythm. She was starting to reclaim the parts of herself that had been buried beneath the weight of everything she had been through. It wasn't just about feeling better. It was about finding balance, learning to coexist with the difficult emotions and memories that still lingered, while also allowing herself to embrace the moments of joy that came her way. One afternoon, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful look on her face. "Mom," she said softly, "do you think I'll always feel this way? Like, will I always feel a little broken?" The question took me by surprise, but I could feel the weight of it. It wasn't just a question about her past. It was a question about her future, about how she saw herself moving forward from here. I thought for a moment before answering. "I don't know, sweetie," I said gently. "I think everyone has their struggles, their own battles to fight. But I also know that you don't have to carry them alone. And you don't have to let them define who you are." She nodded, looking out at the horizon. I could see the wheels turning in her head, processing my words in her own way. It was moments like these, quiet and reflective, that I knew Emily was truly working through her emotions. She wasn't just pushing them aside. She was acknowledging them, learning to understand them, and finding ways to live with them. As the days passed, I watched Emily step back into the world with a little more confidence, a little more assurance in herself. She started reaching out to her friends again, inviting them over to hang out and to play. It was small at first, just a few moments here and there, but it was enough. Enough to show me that she was no longer afraid of living, no longer afraid of being seen, of being herself. She started drawing again, something she hadn't done in months. I found one of her drawings one evening, tucked into a corner of the kitchen counter. It was a picture of a girl standing on a hill, looking at a vast open sky. The girl was small, but her stance was strong, her shoulders held high, and her face, though drawn with simple lines, showed a hint of a smile. At the bottom of the page, Emily had written, "I am not broken. I am growing." It was such a simple drawing, yet it took my breath away. It wasn't just a picture. It was a message of hope, a message that said, despite everything, Emily had learned to see herself differently. She wasn't the same person she had been when all of this started, but she had become someone stronger, someone more resilient, someone who was learning to accept the parts of herself that she once feared. "Mom, I want to show you something," Emily said a few days later. She had been in her room, and when she emerged, she was holding a small box. "I've been working on this for a while." She opened the box to reveal a collection of small hand-painted stones. Each stone had a word or phrase written on it. Some said things like hope, strength, and brave, while others had quotes that Emily had found inspiring. "You're not alone," one read. "It's okay to not be okay," read another. I looked at her, my heart swelling with pride. "These are beautiful, Emily. I made them to remind me," she said softly, "to remind me that I'm not alone in this, that it's okay to be scared, but it's also okay to be strong." Her words were simple, but they were profound. Emily had learned something that I was only beginning to understand. Strength wasn't about never feeling scared or never feeling sad. It was about accepting those feelings and learning to move forward with them. It was about finding peace, not in the absence of fear or pain, but in the willingness to face them head-on. I kept one of the stones in my purse, the one that said, "You're not alone." It became a small, constant reminder of everything Emily had gone through, and everything we had faced together. Even as Emily continued to heal, the road wasn't always easy. There were still moments when she would retreat, still moments when the sadness would return, but they were no longer as overwhelming. She was learning to manage her emotions, to understand them, rather than let them control her. And I was learning right alongside her. I had to remind myself that healing didn't mean perfection. It meant progress. And even on the days when Emily felt lost, when the shadows seemed too close, I knew we were making progress. We were moving forward together. As the months passed, I began to see Emily's confidence grow, little by little. It wasn't always visible to others. Sometimes it was in the way she carried herself, walking a little taller or speaking with a bit more assurance. Other times it was in the quiet moments when she would catch my eye and give me a soft smile. A smile that said she was starting to believe in herself again, even if just for that moment. One day, Emily came to me after school, her face lighting up with excitement. "Mom, guess what? I signed up for the school talent show." I froze for a moment, unsure of how to react. Emily had always been a little shy when it came to things like this, She was never the one to seek the spotlight, and she had always preferred to stay in the background. But here she was, standing before me, her eyes shining with anticipation. "That's amazing, sweetheart," I said, trying to mask my surprise with enthusiasm. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to sing," she replied, her voice filled with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "I've been practicing a song, and I think I'm ready." My heart swelled with pride, and I could feel a wave of emotion wash over me. This wasn't just about Emily wanting to sing. It was about her finding the courage to step outside of her comfort zone, to challenge herself in a way she never had before. "I'm so proud of you, Emily," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're really stepping up, and that takes a lot of strength." She smiled shyly. "I'm still scared, though. I don't know if I'll do well, but I want to try." I could see the fear in her eyes, but I also saw the determination. She was afraid, yes, but she was willing to face it, and that was all I could ask for. The day of the talent show came faster than I expected. Emily had been practicing her song for weeks, and though she was nervous, I could tell she was starting to believe in herself. She wore her favorite dress, one she hadn't worn in a while, and as she looked at herself in the mirror, she smiled softly. "I'm doing this, Mom," she said, her voice full of quiet determination. "You are, sweetheart," I replied, my voice filled with pride. "And I'll be right there cheering you on." When we arrived at the school, the auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Students, teachers, and parents filled the seats, and there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. I could see Emily's nerves creeping back in as she took in the size of the crowd. Her hand tightened around mine, but I could also see the fire in her eyes. She was ready to face the fear, ready to take the step. I stood at the back of the room watching as Emily took the stage. She was shaking slightly, but as the spotlight hit her, she took a deep breath and began to sing. The first few notes were shaky, but as she found her rhythm, something shifted. Her voice grew stronger and more confident, and the audience fell silent, captivated by her performance. I could feel my heart swell with pride as I watched my daughter pour her heart into that song. It wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about hitting every note just right. It was about her standing there, in front of all those people, sharing something so personal with the world. And in that moment, I realized that this was the moment of true healing. This was Emily's way of reclaiming her power, of showing the world, and herself, that she was no longer afraid to step into the light. When the song ended, there was a brief moment of silence before the entire auditorium erupted into applause. Emily stood there, her face flushed with a mixture of shock and joy. She had done it. She had faced her fear and come out stronger on the other side. I rushed to her after the performance, tears in my eyes. "You were amazing, Emily," I said, pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you." She hugged me back, her face beaming with a smile that I hadn't seen in a long time. "I did it, Mom. I really did it." And in that moment, I knew that this was a turning point. Emily wasn't the same girl she had been when this all started. She wasn't the same girl who had been lost in her sadness, unsure of who she was. She was someone new, someone strong, someone capable of facing her fears and embracing the challenges ahead. It wasn't an instant transformation. It wasn't a perfect journey, but it was real and it was her. As we left the school that day, hand in hand, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of peace settle in my chest. We had come so far, both of us, and though there were still challenges ahead, I knew that Emily had found something that would carry her through the rest of her life. The belief that she was enough. We walked home in the quiet of the afternoon, the sun casting a warm glow over everything. Emily was quiet, but I could see the confidence in her step and the quiet pride in her eyes. She had taken a step toward her future, and I knew that whatever came next, she would face it with the strength she had found within herself. As the months rolled on, I continued to see subtle but significant changes in Emily. She was no longer the girl who had felt invisible or broken. She was growing into someone stronger, someone who had learned to navigate the challenges that life threw her way, even when it felt like too much to bear. She was more engaged at school, participating in class, joining activities with her friends, and slowly rebuilding the relationships that had once been strained by her emotional withdrawal. I could see her making more connections, smiling more freely, and standing up for herself in ways that I hadn't seen before. But what made me the proudest wasn't just the outward changes. It was the internal transformation. Emily had learned to trust herself again. She was beginning to realize that her worth wasn't defined by other people's opinions or by the mistakes she had made in the past. She was learning that she didn't have to be perfect to be loved and valued. And most importantly, she was learning to accept herself, flaws and all. One afternoon, Emily and I were sitting together in the living room, looking through old family photos. It was a lazy Saturday, the kind of day where time seemed to slow down, and there was nothing to do but enjoy each other's company. "Mom," she said, breaking the silence, "I was thinking about something." I responded, glancing up from the photo album. "Do you remember when I used to be really scared of everything?" she asked, her voice thoughtful. I nodded, my heart swelling with emotion at the memory. "I remember. You used to worry so much about what might happen. I used to be scared to do anything, even the little things. But now," she trailed off, her eyes far away for a moment as she reflected on her journey. "I don't feel as scared anymore. Not all the time, anyway. I think I've learned that it's okay to be afraid sometimes. It's part of life, but I don't have to let it control me." Her words hit me like a wave. I hadn't realized how much progress she had made until that moment. She had come so far, and in ways that I hadn't even fully recognized. She was embracing her fear, acknowledging it, but not letting it dictate who she was. She was beginning to trust her ability to handle whatever came her way. "You've come so far, Emily," I said softly, my voice thick with pride. "You've learned to face your fears and take control of your life. I'm so proud of you." She smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. "Thanks, Mom. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. And I think that's enough." And in that moment, I realized that this was the resolution I had been waiting for. It wasn't about fixing everything or making it all right. It was about growth, about learning to embrace life's uncertainties and challenges with grace and resilience. Emily was no longer the same girl she had been. She was stronger, braver, and more confident in herself. The journey hadn't been easy, and there were still moments of doubt, of sadness, of fear. But Emily had learned something valuable, that it was okay to be imperfect. It was okay to fall, to stumble, to not have all the answers. What mattered was that she kept moving forward, that she kept trying. I had learned that lesson too. I had spent so much time worrying about how to fix everything, how to make everything perfect. But I had come to realize that love wasn't about fixing things. It was about showing up, being present, and offering support, even when things felt messy or uncertain. I had learned that healing wasn't a straight line. It was a process, one that involved ups and downs, but always moving forward little by little. That evening, as we sat together on the porch, watching the sunset and talking about nothing and everything, I felt a deep sense of peace settle over me. Emily was no longer the child I had once feared was lost to me. She had found her way back to herself, and in doing so had shown me that healing wasn't just about getting better. It was about finding strength in the brokenness, finding beauty in the imperfections. And as we sat there side by side, I knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together. One step at a time. Months passed and the seasons changed. Emily's journey of healing wasn't a straight path, but it was filled with steady progress. There were still moments of vulnerability, days when the weight of the past would resurface, and she would pull inward, needing space to process her emotions. But now there was a difference. Instead of staying locked in those moments of sadness, she would reach out, talk to me, and let me in. The fear that once held her captive was now something she could face, even if it still made her uneasy. One afternoon, as we sat together in the kitchen, Emily looked at me with a thoughtful expression. It had been a particularly quiet day, and we had spent it in each other's company, enjoying the simple things. I was stirring a pot of soup on the stove when she spoke. "Mom," she said, her voice hesitant, but filled with a new kind of strength. "Do you think I'm okay now? Do you think I'm really okay?" Her question caught me off guard, and I stopped stirring for a moment, meeting her eyes. This wasn't a question I had expected, but I could feel the weight behind it. It wasn't just about being fixed. It was about her looking for reassurance that all the pain, the confusion, and the fear hadn't permanently defined her. I set the spoon down and walked over to her, sitting beside her at the kitchen table. I took her hands in mine gently, and I could see the uncertainty still lingering in her eyes. But I could also see the courage she had found, the courage to ask that question, to confront the emotions that still swirled within her. "You're more than okay, Emily," I said softly. "You're strong, you're brave, and you're healing. It's not about being perfect. It's about finding your way through the tough times, learning to live with them and growing. And that's exactly what you're doing." She looked down at our hands for a moment, and I could feel her processing my words. Then slowly she nodded, a small but genuine smile forming on her lips. "I think I'm starting to believe that too," she said quietly. "Maybe I am okay. I'm not fixed, but maybe that's not what matters." "No, it's not," I agreed, my voice filled with a quiet understanding. "What matters is that you're learning to love yourself again, to trust yourself again. You're learning that it's okay to have flaws, to have setbacks, and still be worthy of love and happiness." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of the soup simmering gently in the background, but the quiet wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful, like the calm after a storm, the air still and clear. It was a moment of reflection, a moment to appreciate how far Emily had come. That evening, as we gathered for dinner, I looked around the table at my family. The house was warm, filled with the chatter and laughter of the people we loved. And for the first time in a long time, it felt truly right. There were no perfect moments, no magical resolutions. But there was something more powerful. A sense of peace, of healing, of knowing that we had made it through something difficult and come out stronger on the other side. Emily joined in the conversation, her voice light, her eyes sparkling with a quiet joy that had been missing for so long. She wasn't the same girl she had been when we started this journey. She had learned to embrace the messy parts of herself, the parts that didn't have all the answers. And in doing so, she had found her strength, her resilience, her ability to face life with a heart open to all the possibilities it held. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up at me and whispered, "I think I'm going to be okay, Mom." And as I kissed her forehead and turned off the light, I knew in my heart that she was right. She wasn't just going to be okay. She was already better than okay. She was becoming the person she was always meant to be, the person she had always been deep down. And that person was strong, capable, and full of light. As I left her room and quietly closed the door, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. We had made it through. Not just the hard days, not just the challenges, but we had made it through together, learning along the way. And as I stood in the hallway, I couldn't help but feel a quiet hope for the future, knowing that whatever came next, we would face it side by side with love, strength, and unwavering support. As I look back on everything we've been through, I realize just how much Emily and I have both grown. We went through a period of darkness, each of us feeling isolated in our own way, but together we found a way to navigate it. We learned that healing isn't a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, of setbacks and small victories. But what matters is the willingness to keep moving forward, even when you don't know what's ahead. Emily's journey was never just about overcoming her struggles. It was about understanding that those struggles didn't define her. They were a part of her, yes, but they didn't have to be the whole story. And as her mother, I learned that my job wasn't to fix everything or make her perfect. My job was to be there, to offer love and support, and to trust that she would find her way, just as I was learning to find mine. Through all of this, I've come to realize something important about parenting. It's not about making everything right. It's about showing up when it's hard, even when you feel like you're not enough. It's about being present and listening, even when you don't have all the answers. And it's about teaching our children that it's okay to be imperfect, that it's okay to be afraid, and that it's okay to take things one step at a time. As Emily continues to grow and heal, I know there will still be challenges ahead. There will be moments when she feels unsure, when the shadows of her past resurface, and when the fear threatens to take hold again. But now, I'm confident that she has the tools she needs to face those moments with strength, resilience, and a belief in herself. I also know that I will be right beside her, offering my support in whatever way she needs. Our journey has taught me something invaluable: the importance of love, patience, and understanding. It's not always about having the answers, but about creating a space where healing can happen. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, and trusting that everything will fall into place in its own time. As I look at Emily now, I see a young girl who is no longer defined by her struggles, but by her strength and her ability to rise above them. She is learning to embrace who she is, to trust in her own voice, and to believe that she is enough just as she is. And as her mother, I will continue to walk with her on this journey, knowing that the most important thing we can give each other is unconditional love and unwavering support. We've come a long way and the future is bright. With each passing day, I am more and more proud of the person Emily is becoming. She is no longer just surviving, she is thriving. If you found Emily's journey of healing and growth as inspiring as we did, don't forget to share this story with someone who might need a little hope today. Remember, you're not alone in your struggles, and just like Emily, we all have the strength to overcome, one step at a time. If you want to hear more stories about resilience, healing, and the power of love, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And as always, leave us a comment sharing your thoughts. How have you overcome challenges in your own life? Let's continue to grow together. Thank you for being part of this journey. You're stronger than you think.